Welcome back. Sorry about that. The app was just sort of cutting in and cutting out. So when we're looking at that journey that we're on, you've got to first of all pace yourself and look at it as a journey in various steps that are going to come together, little by little by little, which shape and form the path that we're on. So you're not going to learn every single thing instantly. The journey takes time. So at first, what happens is when there's any obstacle, people think that an obstacle means the end, or if it hasn't worked by now, then there's no hope. That's what happens. So like with anything, when we're trying to learn something, if it doesn't go in straight away, or we don't get it, or we don't grasp it straight away, it very quickly sort of we put up sort of resistance ourselves. So if you went to a language school and you were trying to learn French, what you wouldn't expect is that you wouldn't expect that going to learn French would instantly be done in one day. So you wouldn't go to a French class and think, okay, I'm going to learn some things about French today. I'm going to, by the end of the week, have French completely understood. That's not going to happen. You're not going to understand everything in 1 week, okay? But what we tend to do is we tend to put very strictly on ourselves, like, okay, first thing is, this is how much work I've done to recover. I'm not recovered yet, so therefore I'm never going to recover. That is the first steps that everyone gets stuck on. They go, okay, I've done X, Y, Z. I haven't improved. If I haven't improved, this is where I am. And so that becomes a very, very slippery sort of slope in terms of coasting, because what happens there is we feel very demotivated when we're not making the instant progress that we want to make. And in that situation, very quickly, we just start thinking, well, if I haven't noticed any improvement and I'm not going to get better, what's the point of inputting this much energy? And that's where we get stuck, because when you get into a position where you're not getting results for the amount that you're doing, you then stop doing. So if you were going to the gym and you were never improving and you were never getting any results, very quickly you would start to think, hey, I'm not getting results, I'm not improving, I'm not doing very well, I'll cut down the amount I'm going to the gym because it's taking too much time and I'm getting a very limited amount back. So the thing that you need to do is you need to think about taking it one day at a time. You're learning all the time. Say, for example, I just sat down and read 3 anxiety books that I've never read before, okay? I would learn things about anxiety that I don't know now. There would be things, of course, there would be things. I've read a lot on anxiety and OCD over the years. Really, I was sort of overdoing it in terms of reading and researching all the time. But if I picked up, of course, 3 books on anxiety, I'm going to learn something. Anyone who thinks that they know everything on a subject, absolutely no way. You're going to learn something from any book. You can learn something from your own book, even if you just reread it from a different point of view. You would think things and new thoughts would come into your head. You can learn from anything. So that's so key. And I think what's really important is when we look at the OCD recovery journey, and we look at pacing ourselves. We look at going along gradually. We look at what it is that we're doing here. We are on a journey that is teaching us new things about OCD and ourselves. We are learning about so many areas and aspects of life. Treat this journey as a journey, not something that you need instantly fixed, rid of, done and sorted right now, because that's the problem. When we get into this chase of, I need all this fixed, I need all this done, I need all this sorted right now, this journey just needs to be finished. No, it's like if you went to school and you only focused on the academic element, you'd miss all the socializing, all the sort of parts of your growing up, which makes up the whole experience. And the OCD recovery journey is very much the same. It's the whole experience that you're going through, a sort of life-transforming, empowering journey that you are going through and you are experiencing little by little, bit by bit. And it won't happen overnight as much as you want it to, and grit your teeth, and I should be recovered now. They've recovered. Why am I not doing as well as them? And so on and so on and so on, which are the aspects of the journey that all come together and make us feel trapped and stuck. So we've got to pace ourselves. We've got to take it one day at a time. We've got to think of this journey as, what happens is people think, oh my God, I don't want to wait 6 months to a year to get rid of this symptoms. No, you're not going to be stuck forever, indefinitely with these symptoms. That's not the situation. But you won't be able to release it fully right now. Even when you stop fighting and you get on with your life a bit more and you learn a few tools, it reduces quite a bit. But we're not always locked at 100%. We feel like that often, but like it waxes and wanes. It goes up and down as we go along the journey. And so that's so key. Can everyone just let me know they can hear me okay? If you just put in a comment in below, because I was having problems with the app. For some reason, my Instagram account today was there was some kind of glitch, and it was sort of going up and down, and the screen wasn't working so well. So just, if you do hear me, just put a comment below. So I want you to think about, with that journey, you're learning things, you're experiencing new things that are going to shape and empower your life. If I hadn't been through the OCD recovery journey, if I had never been through that, there is no way I would have these views of life that I have today. I had to go through that to have these views. Before, if I'd come and spoken on this Instagram live 15, 20 years ago, that sort of time frame, I got OCD at 17. I was really bad at 17. Then I got sort of better for about a period of six to 9 months, around 18 to 19. Then I got really bad 21, 22, 23. So yeah, you're talking 15 odd years ago. If I'd come on there, it was very black and white thinking. It was very rigid. I have to get better. I have to have this all fixed and sorted. I need the answers now. I need to be on, if I did that, I'm rotten. I'm a terrible, horrendous person if I did ... I can't stand it if I get seen ... I can't stand it if I have this one symptom and health OCD, and maybe I end up in hospital ill and dead or whatever. Everything was exaggerated to the absolute max, and I was very concerned with how people saw me, what people thought of me, and physical symptoms. Oh my God, my whole body's breaking down. What's happening to me? Oh, I'm treatment resistant. Oh, I'm the rarest case. And that was sort of compounded by lots of things I was seeing in the forums, because I would constantly be in these forums and they would be saying things like, I'd be looking and think, God, that guy's doing so much better than me, and like their symptoms are nowhere near as bad as mine. And like I was utterly convinced I was like the worst case of OCD on the planet. Now, don't get me wrong, my OCD journey was full of hurdles, Often you hear sort of on social media, a lot of you hear accounts sort of say like, oh yeah, I got over OCD, I left the thoughts there, and I read this book, and then off I went, sort of quite simplistically. And that was definitely not the case for me. But there's big difference between sort of mild and chronic OCD, huge. And that's what gets mistaken all the time. And it's like, that wouldn't work with me, because for me, I was absolutely convinced something was terrifying, that something was very, very frightening. And so I needed to expose to that to show my brain that it wasn't scary. I needed to really do that and get into seeing that. I needed to dispute those irrational beliefs and break down why they weren't terrifying, really face those, really get into those. And because I wasn't doing that at first, and I didn't even know that there was a path with that, of course, it felt completely overwhelming. It felt completely terrifying. And I'd look at these other more mild forms of OCD, and I was thinking, oh my God, like this is just so different. And then you get more and more hopeless, And then when you're going for help and they're sort of explaining to you, oh, like you've got to just leave thoughts there, change your reaction with the thoughts. And then I thought, God, that's working for the others, and that's the only information I'm getting. So how the hell am I going to make any steps forward and progress? And that whole thing very quickly became a situation where I was just like literally all the time feeling hopeless. So I know I come on here now and I might talk about hope, motivation, going for it, all these things, but that's only come from a place of not having that. That's come from a place where I literally thought that I would never get better, where I thought I couldn't see recovery could happen. I thought it was like a curse. I thought that all the forums I went to, people, people were just saying, oh, you've got to learn to live with it, ride the ups and downs, you never recover. I was feeling completely hopeless with that. And so, for a long period of time, I thought I could sort of improve, but I didn't really see any path. And I didn't really see that life was going to really get better from this position. So, that the problem with that is when people see it today, they think, oh, Rob's sort of talking reasonably confidently on these topics here and that. I'm not. I don't understand that. Like, how can I ever get to that? I'm just trying to say these things don't come from just being luckily motivated to do it. It comes from the hard challenge that then creates that position to do that. It's like if you look at an athlete or you look at anyone and you think, God, look at their amazing genetics. So that didn't come from that. No humans sort of just at 8 years old, just wake up super confident, no hurdles, no problems. It comes from those challenges. Those challenges are what molded everything. So it was that, let's think about the sort of initial hurdles. So age 17, health OCD, whacked on, 100% anxiety, could barely sleep, could barely function, absolutely terrified, going from hospital to hospital, doctor to doctor to get test results, because I believed that once I got that test result, then I would recover, then that would all be over, and then I'd be back to normal and back to living my life, and I just had to get that result, right? That was what was happening a lot, okay? So I was in that constant chase of doing that, always thinking that the next test result would bring long-term freedom for life. So in that situation, I had no tools for recovery, and I was doing that. So obviously there's hurdles all along the way. OCD morphing all the time. I didn't believe in therapy at the time, or even talking about it. At that time, I thought OCD was a weakness. I thought I was weak for thinking it. So I didn't want to share it. I didn't want to talk about it. And I also believed at that time that anybody who did speak to a therapist was weak and just causing drama and attention-seeking stuff. That's what I believed at the time. So therefore, I had all those hurdles around me. Obviously, isolated with OCD, not talking to anyone about it, completely scared of speaking to other people, and not even setting up an option for me to then make progress. So at the beginning, there was loads of hurdles, okay? I had no idea of reassurance. I was doing reassurance all day long. Then as I moved through those, and then I sought help, then there was improvement, then there was, then it morphed into sort of the OCD without the external compulsions. So because it moved to that, and then it didn't have the external compulsions, and they were all mental compulsions, I then got myself in a problem there, because I didn't then see how I could ever get out of that. That was a huge barrier for years, because that barrier made me then not believe in ever getting better or ever getting help, because I thought, like, how could I ever change my thinking on things if, for example, that if the mental rituals in my head without an external compulsion, if I can't cut down that external compulsion, then it's because there's no external compulsion to cut out, then I'm just going to stay in this sort of mental torture trap forever. That's what I literally felt all the time. That's what I was literally thinking all the time about that. I was thinking, like, how would I ever get out of that position? So that was sort of very, that hindered me a lot there, and especially with sensory motor OCD, when it was just sort of me feeling sort of trapped, locked in the mental sensation. I then felt again very lost, because I thought, how am I ever going to get out of this mental sensation? Because again, how do you expose to this? It's in me. And then I thought OCD was a thing that was sort of trying to attack me. So I thought, well, how can I ever stop that self-attacking cycle? And that became very scary. And then that's where I was really finding things very difficult. So then obviously when I found out about breaking down fears and all of that along the journey, but they weren't laid out very well. Even some of the best people I went to for help laid some of the great foundations, but they didn't explain it in a way that I understood what was actually happening and how to do it. So it was still a lot of self-discovery, and like, it was the OCD landscape then was sort of very bumpy, in the sense that people, there was talk about uncertainty, of course. You could find some Ellis stuff, but I didn't really know where I was going. I didn't really know what I was doing. So I made big progress at times that really paved the way in so many ways, but then implementing it was very difficult and not explained in the best way. So it was difficult there. So if you look at that journey, and we've got a playlist on our YouTube channel called The Hurdles of the OCD Recovery Journey. And in that Hurdles of the OCD Recovery Journey, you will see that there's so many hurdles, but they're not really hurdles. They are mental blocks that we've built up through not understanding, not knowing, feeling demotivated, OCD morphing, because OCD is always a sort of game ahead. So what happens is, as we're going along this journey, OCD is sort of moving around us and trying to jump in front. And so we can think, shit, I've recovered, I've been great for a year. And then bang, it comes in with a new theme that you've got no tools for or you don't apply the tools because you believe this is real, this is an exception, And then that whole thing sort of masses together and makes you feel more and more stuck. So there's loads of things like that. I mean, look, it's not just the OCD landscape. You've got to look at life landscape, relationships, careers. As someone who's starting a business, there's huge hurdles, right? You've got things like if someone was starting a business, they have to work so much with very little feedback of the company doing well, and then investing a lot of money and problems with the management. They have all different things that go along in career. Or say with sport, someone could have an injury, somebody could have, someone could have an injury, someone could get kicked off the team, then allowed onto another team, then break, and then the break doesn't happen, and then they suddenly make it through, and then they're not as well, or then they have another injury, or all these various hurdles. So the OCD recovery journey is full of those because life is full of those hurdles. Life has tons of those hurdles, and it's about rolling with those waves. It's about staying consistent, persistent each day, keeping going, one day at a time, day after day, day after day, day after day, making that change. And then that all together along the journey comes to form the recovery journey. But initially what happens is when those hurdles come, we think, oh, this is all too much, I give up. Or I'm not getting anywhere, forget it. And then that becomes barrier. And then often we think, oh, I'm gonna leave this for now. But it's the getting back up. Like you hear that phrase quoted 1,000 times on social media. But it is the getting back up. It's the going again. Because you know that with persistence, constant persistence, like anything I do, any hurdle or obstacle or difficulty, I always know that sort of my kind of mindset is just always persistence one day at a time. And I know that with that persistence can overcome and achieve so many things, because I just know that not many people are going to keep persisting in that way. I'm talking about in aspects in other areas of your life, with your sort of careers, with your sports, with whatever. I always think I'm very, very persistent. Now, that's not something that I always had. Yes, there was a genetic element, but a lot of it was just shaped from life, seeing that, well, what other option have you got apart from just to keep persisting, to keep going, one day at a time. And that builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. That question there from Kelsey. Do you have OCD at all now, Rob? No chronic anxiety, no chronic guilt. So I can't tell I've got OCD. There's nothing in my head now that I can tell I've got OCD, apart from like the odd occasion where I'm like, it's trying to rear its head in some angle that I haven't spotted until I spot it, and then it goes. Barely any difference whatsoever in quality of life. 0.000. Well, it's a kind of phrase that we often describe with OCD risk, but it really is like that, barely noticing it. And so the only time you're stuck is because you are scared of something. You are either scared of something, or you are either trying to fight something or internally, or you haven't changed your relationship yet with it. So you've got all of that going on from various angles, and that's what's keeping you stuck. But it takes a long time to realize that, embody that, and really feel that. Okay, it took me a long time. Okay, it wasn't something that I just quick fixed like that. You could say you took me back now to say 20 years old, and you just put out in front of me the books on our reading list and said, go and read them. how quickly am I going to recover? That didn't work like that. I had to read those books quite a few times. I had to put in tons of exposures. Now, not everyone needs to do a lot of exposures. Some people don't even really need to do any exposures, because a lot of, for other people, it's about their relationship with their thinking and so on, and it's different for different people. But it's not a quick fix. And do you know what really made a difference was surrendering to that? Realizing that, hey, even if this took 5, 10, 15, 20 years, like not 20 years, let's not exaggerate that too far. Let's say even if this takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, in the scheme of my life, that's not that big a deal, right? And I once I did that gave up a lot of that pressure, that internal pressure of where I was like, I've got to be fixed now, I've got to have this finished now, I've got to get this all done, this has all got to be sorted, because that's what was fueling so much of it. Like I was literally like, it's my responsibility to have this all fixed and done and finished tomorrow. It's my responsibility to be on top of this right now. And it was that was keeping me so damn stuck, because I was so utterly focused on having everything gone, my recovery all sorted, and being on top of absolutely everything, that was detrimental, because I was putting so much internal pressure, and that's not going to help with anything. It's like if you're learning to competitive run and you're sort of thinking of every step to like absolute precision, completely focused and not sort of going with the flow of it, or trying to paint a painting without sort of getting into it, just painting and thinking every brush perfectly, you're going to probably do the most overly controlled, ridiculous sort of structure setup to what you're trying to do. It's not going to be very helpful. It's not going to be very beneficial for you at all. So, life, it's like with creative process. Creative process is taking a step back and thinking, okay, let's allow whatever to happen here. Let's allow it to work freely and experience this and see how this stuff goes. And that was so key to anything. It's like when I do all these tweets and I write about OCD, I'm not just sort of sitting there like, you've got to write, you've got to do this, you've got to make sure that you get this information out, and like sort of hammering it that way. That's the worst way to write. And like anyone who's written, who's done a lot of writing or anything like that, will say like you'll get complete mental block if you're trying to approach things like that. So that's definitely what I wasn't trying to do. What I do is like I'll sit out on my balcony in the evening, I'll sit there and I'll think about writing them, sort of just trying to be creative and going along at my own pace. Sometimes I'll sit there with a glass of wine, sometimes I'll look up at the sky and think about it and think about my journey and reflect on that. That's what I do, because that's what it makes it come to me, the thinking, instead of me going to it. One of my sort of inspirations in a lot of life is a man called Ray Dalio, who wrote an amazing book called Principles. And he was talking about, when he's a big believer in transcendental meditation, he was saying like some of his best ideas for life and everything comes to him through that, just by allowing that to come in and enter into his mind. And so many great writers or people succeeding in any areas of life often say things like, you often hear quotes of people saying like, I swim 1 or 2 hours a day, and like literally when I'm swimming all my ideas come to me, or when I'm jogging my ideas come to me. We think we've got to sort of fight to go towards it, but it's actually the opposite, especially with creative process. It's sort of allowing those things to come in as we're going through life. Some of my sort of most helpful ideas that have helped develop a lot of the things I do today, and shaped all the creation of our company that we run today with OCD is it came from thousands of little light bulb moments throughout life. And that's the same as the OCD recovery journey. In terms of my journey, it was thousands of moments, like sitting at dinner one day, I've had a realization about this about OCD, on holiday at the beach, and then thought about that, or been at work and thought about that. It's a journey like that. I've never met anyone in my life with OCD who couldn't recover. I've never met somebody who I thought, no chance for them, or like something's genetically different in their brain, there's no hope. It's never that. It's needing to shape their realizations, their observations, how they're viewing life, bit by bit by bit by bit, as a process that then comes together to shape that whole internal framework for the OCD recovery journey. And that's so key, that's so vital. But it takes time to see that, to really feel that, and to realize that. These things don't just happen overnight. They're not like, what happens with us is we are so used to getting instant results, especially with like social media and online stuff. We like want everything instant. We want food instant from Deliveroo. We want responses instant with messages. We want dates instant with Tinder or whatever. All these things that we think deliver. We're so used to having. We have this view. So I think what happens is, we're so used to that space in between where there's the discomfort being instantly rewarded with an answer in some way, that we get so little comfort at sitting without getting. So like when I was younger and you didn't have all these apps and phones, being bored was a thing. Now like you've got so much to do all the time, it's less of that. But that's a creative process, that bored, the same as it's a recovery process in OCD, sitting in that discomfort, not trying to work the things next out, not trying to need all the answers right now, not trying to get rid of every uncomfortable sensation of anxiety and OCD right now. So as we're getting more and more comfortable in that position, that's shaping our reality differently, because we're learning to navigate and feel these different emotions and sensations. And that's again molding all that path towards recovery, bit by bit by bit by bit. Like say for example Instagram Lives. When I started these Instagram Lives, I came on here and I'd sort of speak a bit like this. Okay, and then this OCD thing, you need to do that. And I'd obviously good at that point, because I wasn't starting Instagram Lives when I just started learning about OCD, so I had a good knowledge of OCD, but I couldn't put it into like when you're doing Instagram Lives. After a long time, there's no sort of ums and ahs, because you're so used to thinking of what's coming next and flowing. Same as when you talk to a friend. You talk to a friend that you really know, there's no ums and ahs. And that's why I often explain to people like who are really nervous about dating, where there's sort of ums and ahs and lots of questions. It's only because they're nervous. If they spoke to them like they spoke to their best friend, it would come along across completely differently, because they'd be confident and it would all change the way that they're conducting themselves. But the reason that doesn't happen with us is, what we do is, when we're on Instagram Live, is that when we're first doing them, we become nervous about how we know, it's being recorded, it's how it's being perceived. So because of that, we start trying to be extra cautious and extra controlled. And that's where the umming and ahhing comes from, because we're trying to control more and trying to have it all perfect. So that is key with the recovery journey, in terms of it's this internal fight, this internal, I need rid of this, I need an answer, I need to get this solved. If I can get all this solved and answered and fixed, then I'll be perfectly how I need. And there's a quote by Albert Einstein, which is sort of like, the thinking that got us into this problem isn't the same thinking that's going to get us out. We often think that we can sort of problem solve hard and fast to get out of the OCD cycle, which isn't how it works. So do you see how this Marianne question is key here? It's like, I'm ignoring these thoughts, but still they're so strong. So I guess I'm not ignoring them in the subconscious. It's nothing to do with subconscious. What's happening here is, because you'll get really lost with the whole subconscious stuff. You'll think, it's out of my control, I'm never going to be able to get out of this. What's happening here is that it's like you still are scared of the thoughts. You're either really scared of the content and it's latched there, or you're super scared of the thoughts themselves and you're scared and fighting and sort of battling with the thoughts back and forth. So that's causing a lot of the problem. Do you have any tips for fight? So it's not to do with subconscious, it's your reaction with them. You're still scared of them, that's all. Do you have any tips for finding a specialised therapist? I feel my therapist doesn't give me proper help. With what we do, we provide coaching for OCD worldwide, all different countries. We work with pretty much people in every country in the world, and we have translators as well. I do all of the coaching myself with one-to-one with translators. We do lots of webinars where then there's speakers. Some of our moderators are regular speakers on those webinars, and we run those webinars every week covering all the different types of OCD and fears. And so we do that, and there's lots of motivational speaking moderators that come sometimes onto these calls and share their journey about their story and how they were stuck and so on. So we've got a great team there for everything you need in relation to OCD. And with OCD journey, it's about fear. It's about fear, life structure, changing your relationship with OCD, getting comfortable with uncertainty, breaking down your fears and changing your perspectives on life and those fears. And all of that, I decided to come from a life coaching perspective, because I am a strong believer in this whole life overhaul in how we're approaching OCD, changing our perspectives using the pillars of anxiety recovery, which is the likes of the works by the likes of Claire Weeks, Paul David, the great, obviously, philosophy over thousands of years, Greek and Roman philosophy, from Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca the Younger, Diogenes, all these characters that then formed the way for what then became CBT and REBT, and primarily Albert Ellis's work, Rational, all about rational thinking. And that's what it is, that's life. And these skills are life skills. I'm a strong believer in that we need to teach rational thinking in the schooling system, and it needs to come up that way to help change people, to stop them from being disturbing themselves. And rational thinking is something that we need to learn from each other, and we need to learn to see things more rationally. So I've always come from a life coaching perspective of it. So we cover everything for OCD, anything to do with OCD we cover, but also if you want to go to a therapist at the same time as seeing us, lots of people do that as well, and then just see which works for them. We never discourage that. People go and see therapists. A lot of people that we work with are seeing therapists as well. And if you want to find, what happens is we are always looking for making sure that we are doing recovery perfectly. Okay, so what we need to look at is, what are we actually scared of? We are scared of being stuck forever and doing recovery wrong. Okay, so after a while, if we're endlessly looking for more help, so we're like, okay, I've got that, but then is there more information? Should I go to this next person? You have to draw a line at some point. So you've got to say, okay, I'm going to go to see a therapist and get some help. If that's not working, well, hopefully come in and see us, and we're confident that we'll make a huge change in relation to your OCD. Because OCD is basically just a fear cycle. It's an anxiety fear cycle. That's all it is. It's a fear and perspective cycle that once it's changed, it doesn't have that reaction. And with it, it's once you see that and you've had your therapy as well, otherwise it becomes an endless chase. Like I went to probably about 10, 12, 13 different therapists, just going, chasing more and more and more and more information. So at one point, you've got to think, like, what do I need to learn? So find yourself, if you want, find yourself a therapist that helps you with OCD. Come and see us, or don't come and see us, and use all our free material that we have on the YouTube channel and in the books and the reading list, and see what works for you. That's the best way to do it. And we're very confident that with us, that our knowledge of OCD, that every aspect of OCD is covered, and we rarely ever see anything that we think, that's not that's some how do I put this? What happens is, there's rarely a situation with OCD that I ever see where I think the problem that the person is trying to solve is a problem that requires more thinking from other angles by them out of the problem. It's not that. It's usually very simplistic. It's usually the core fear, looking at why you're scared, breaking that down specifically and changing our relationship with the thoughts. But what happens is we're constantly chasing, there must be another, and there must be another way, and then we're getting lost in a cycle. And that's what sent me halfway around the globe, sort of trying to find more and more about OCD, because I was constantly thinking, I need to know more, where right in the core of it all was just fear and changing my relationship with that fear. Let's have a look here. Lubas, Rob, my intrusive thoughts come in specific situations. What would you recommend? Yes, they will come in specific situations, because there'll be specific situations that you're scared of. Now, you can obviously expose in those situations to them. That's a great way to solve that. And avoiding those situations becomes the problem. So it's going to those situations so that we're not avoiding the place. We often build up sort of fears of those locations. Oh, it'd be terrible if I had a panic attack there because I had a bad one in the past, and so on, and then we start avoiding. How long did it take me to recover? Probably all in totality around 18 to 24 months, but then even sort of 3 years after the first date, I was making much more improvement. And so things were improving bit by bit, more and more as we went. Let me just have a glass of water, or actually from this. From this tap is just as good. So what happens is you are fixated on the time process at the moment because you're thinking, I need to get better in the next 2-3 months. How long is it going to take? Oh my God. Look, 4, 5, 6, 7 months along that journey, I was functioning well enough in life, but there was sort of chronic anxiety and chronic guilt latching in the background. That ain't that bad. You've got to get used to that because that's part of the journey. It's the constantly, I've got to get rid of it. I've got to do everything I can to get rid of it. That whole battle that's going on. And that becomes so much of the problem because we're so fixated on when's it going to go, when's it going to go, when's it going to go, when's it going to go. We're watching it under a microscope, every sensation till it's gone. That's a large part of the problem. Do you believe OCD causes depression? If you look at depression itself, okay, there is often a biological catalyst. However, the thing that's fueling it is still those beliefs, the irrational beliefs and so on. Even the cases of people that I've spoken to over the years, and look, I've worked with people with PTSD, I've worked with people with depression, I've worked with people with all of these kinds of situations over the years. Like a girl came to me, Elena Ferns, about 3-4 years ago. She'd been in the Ariana Grande Manchester Arena terrorist attack. A bomb had gone off. People had died all around her, and people were horrendously injured. She developed PTSD. She froze on the spot. Her partner had to lift her out and carry her out. She could never even hear about it and watch it on the TV, hear anything about Ariana Grande. Her whole body froze. She went from therapist to therapist. She couldn't get better. She was completely convinced that she was still terrified and her body was causing all these physical symptoms. She completely recovered in not that long. And there's a whole video on it on her journey on this page if you scroll down. And that's because she had to change her relationship with that event, with what happened there. That was what was key. Changing her relationship. Once she did that, went back there, exposures with me, going back to Manchester Arena, all these things, that then changed. What's an exposure? It's just facing something that you thought was terrifying, and you actually go and build up bit by bit by bit. It's not rocket science, you can do it on your own. You can just think, okay, I'll take steps towards that gradually, bit by bit by bit, and then you're less and less scared, and then it changes as you're learning why you're doing it and what you imagined it to all be so scary in your head. So she did that, and then all the physical symptoms went away. Now, chronic depression is the same. There's thoughts and beliefs that are keeping it all going. There's fears in there that are fueling it all from the core. And because you can't see those or spot those, then you think, oh my God, it's happening on its own. But it isn't. It's those beliefs that are fueling the cycle. Albert Ellis spoke a lot about that. The next question I was going to say is, so you're taking the pressure off yourself to get better right this second, okay? That's one of the first things. But also you're having compassion for yourself on this journey. This isn't a journey that is super easy, that everyone should just get it and grasp it straight away. It's difficult. It's got hurdles along the way. It's not easy all along the way, okay? Give yourself some credit for that. Be kind to yourself for that. You know, because it's oversimplified so often, people think, oh, it should be easier, it shouldn't be this difficult. Then if I'm doing badly, then it's just me who's doing that. I'm a bad person, I'm useless. No, that's not the case at all. What's happened is our journeys are all different, and it's often oversimplified, and in reality, it's going to take time and it's going to take practice. Okay, you're not going to have it all done and fixed and all sorted straight away. That's not going to happen straight away, okay? Because that is how we would like it to be. And we would desperately like it to be like that. Everything's different. It's like going to the gym. One person go to the gym, work out for 6 months and look in fantastic shape. Another person can go to the gym, work out for 2 years and not be in the same shape. It's different. That doesn't mean those people that, like someone like me, who it took a long time and it took so much work and so on, it was much more stubborn than the OCD in the sense of my beliefs were very rigid. I imagine the OCD is the same genetically in most people, but it was my beliefs and sort of my experiences and life experiences and background that had all shaped that and then made that feel so much more hard and more difficult and very rigid views that I built up. So that changed. People often think, oh God, my OCD is 10 times stronger than theirs. Yes, between sort of like mild OCD and very chronic OCD, but otherwise there's barely any differences. It's all just beliefs that are sort of fueling it and making it feel in that way and sort of so strong and so latched. So it's basically like that. This has been quite a long Instagram live for me today, actually. Because I had a few glitches with the Instagram just when I started up, and so it wasn't loading properly and things like that, and so I was trying to get it working, and then I thought this is a topic which I've wanted to cover for a long time, and there's so much to talk about on this topic when I'm on here, and I do want to come on here and do some longer Instagram lives covering all different sections that you want to see covered, and there's going to be a lot more interview style with me talking to Nick, me talking to the other moderators, Momin and so on, and then speaking to me, and also myself going on lots of other social media channels talking about OCD and so on. So there's going to be a lot more stuff to come. There's a lot. I mean, nowadays in the modern world, doing these videos is the best way to get information about OCD across. So there's going to be tons of these. So guys, I will see you back on here on the next Instagram live. I'm going to try and keep these up every other day. I'm going to try and hold myself to it. I know I come on here and I say it often, but I really do need to, because that way I can get across the information that I want on so many aspects of the journey. And there is so much to the OCD journey. I mean, today I'm talking mainly about sort of bits about my journey, the motivational aspects, the hurdles of recovery. But then we have all the individual topics, sensory motor OCD, HOCD, harm OCD, ROCD, existential OCD, all these things, and looking and breaking down all those aspects, as well as anxiety in general, generalized anxiety disorder, and so on. Guys, I will see you on the next Instagram live. Take it easy, guys. See you later.